Good morning, everybody. And on my turn, I would also like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak here today. As Mr. Wong said, it's true that the EU and the US markets are amongst the major markets for toys exported from this region. And in that view, we already try to educate. As we heard from the CPC, it is important to educate. We tried to do that last November. Seeing it was so successful, we are back here today. And again, I would like to thank for the invitation. I would like to highlight some of the aspects today. And it's the definitions and obligations you have as manufacturer, but also other economic operators. I would also like to highlight information on the identification, the technical documentation, declaration of conformity, safety assessment, and about the stricter safety requirements. Well, 2 years ago, we were here also in this toy fair at Hong Kong, and we explained already the requirements, so I will not go into detail on that. I would advise you to have a look on the website of the Hong Kong Toy Council, in which you will find a presentation. So the safety requirements did not change, and they were explained, but I would like to enter in details on other obligations. Before going into detail, a first consideration to make is if your product is subject to the Toy Safety Directive, and therefore we need to have a look at the definition of a toy. It is a product designed or intended, whether or not exclusively, for use in play by children under 14 years of age. This is a very important definition. And if we look to the products which are in front of you, a child may think that everything which is in front of you is appealing and might be used to play with, but does not render that glass or that pencil which is in front of you to become a toy. So please have a close look to this definition. And in order to help you as a manufacturer, the Commission published several guidelines in order to distinguish what kind of products you have. We heard about children's products, but that's a huge range of products, and it's not all about toys. We have children pyjamas, which are children products, but a pyjama is not necessarily a toy. So here, in order to try to help you out, I would advise you to have a look at the guidance documents. You have the link on top of the slide. The slides will also be made available to you, so you don't need to copy it. But please have a close look. If you have problems with classification issues, information may be found. That was a short introduction of the definition of a toy. And once you know that your product is a toy, economic operators have certain obligations. A manufacturer has to manufacture accordance with the requirements of the Toy Safety Directive. They have to carry out a conformity assessment procedure. And most important is to draw up a technical file, the technical documentation, which includes a DOC, it's the Declaration of Conformity. Once they have proceeded with that, they can affix visibly the CE marking. What are the obligations for the economic operators? First of all, we heard already from the CPSC that it's manufacturers and importers who have a responsibility. And it's indeed correct to say that economic operators are responsible for the compliance of the toy in relation to their role in the supply chain and distribution chain. Who is manufacturer? It is any legal or natural person who manufactures or has a toy designed and manufactured and places the toy on the EU market. If we have a closer look at the definition of a manufacturer, it does not stipulate the location of the manufacturer. So the manufacturer may be in the US, he can be in Europe, he can be in China, he can be in Hong Kong. So the location of the manufacturer doesn't matter. If he complies with this definition, he's considered to be the manufacturer. An importer has to be established in the European Union, and he brings the toy from outside the EU on the EU market. And here we have some specific requirements, well, it's not requirements, obligations. If that importer places the toy on the market under his own name or brand name or trademark, he becomes the manufacturer, and then he will end up having higher responsibility. Or if he modifies the toy in such a way that the compliance is affected, he also becomes the manufacturer. The same principle for a distributor. It's another economic operator than the manufacturer or importer. It's the one who makes available the toy on the market. However, we all know that there are big distributor chains who have products placed on the market under their own name or trade name, and they become also manufacturer in that case. Again, implication is that they have a higher responsibility. Also, if they make changes to the toy in such a way that compliance is affected, they become manufacturer. I have listed an overview in order to help you to check what kind of economic operator you are. I know it's not very visible, but there's a website at the bottom of this slide. Please have a look at this table, and it will help you to classify your position as economic operator. I tried to make an overview of the obligations you have, and if we have a look at the first column of a manufacturer, it's clearly written that you have to draw up a technical documentation, a technical file, and a declaration of conformity, that you have to affix your address, an identification, and the CE marking. We heard the previous speaker about the tracking label, so if I refer to address and identification, we have similar requirements. They are not identical, so please verify exactly what you need to affix, but this gives you an overview. During the November training, I went into detail on each and every step of them, and again, this presentation is available on the Hong Kong Toy Council website. So I will not go to each and every item of it, but please have a look at the presentation uploaded on that website. What I would like to help you today is, how do I have to compile my technical documentation? Yesterday I was in a training in Shenzhen area, and one of the questions we had, well, most of the questions, concerned the technical documentation. What exactly is expected to file into that documentation? Well, I'm going to try to have a quick overview of this file. The most important thing to know is that it contains all relevant data of the means used by you as a manufacturer to ensure that your toy is compliant. Important to note is that it shall be drawn up in one of the official EU languages. Chinese is not one of our languages, but we do accept English or any other EU language. Important to know. What do you have to file into the documentation? Well, there are 8 items. I will introduce them step by step. However, I would like to say that the whole detailed explanation is contained in a guidance document which is called the Technical Documentation Guidance Document. It is available on the website in Chinese language. So important to know is that each step is explained into Chinese language in this guidance document. If we have a look at the first item, it says that a detailed description of the design and manufacture, including a list of components and materials used in the toy, as well as the safety data sheets on chemical use to be obtained from the chemical suppliers, is needed. It's one sentence, but it has a big impact. We heard Ms. Tenenbaum calling out for safety by design. Well, I think this is also part of that aspect, is that we need a very nice description of the design, manufacture, and every detailed information, because in that stage, indeed, it will help already to prevent you from having future recalls. Let's have a closer look to that sentence. If we have design and manufacture, what do we require you to insert in the technical documentation? That is a picture. I prefer a colored picture with enough pixels that it's clearly to be identified. The packaging, that can be a picture of the packaging or examples or an electronic format of the packaging. instructions and warnings that you're going to affix to your product. We heard talking about age grading, and indeed that's also important to know in your design stage, what is my intended user? What is the age grade of my product? Because it has an impact on your design. If you have a toy which is for a baby, you're not going to design it for a child 6 years and above. It has other requirements. So it's important during your first design steps and your development steps that you take a good age suitability and that you think about it, and you have to put that down in your technical documentation. Also, the manufacturing process has to be filed. What does it mean? What is your process? Do you use molding? Do you use cutting or whatever? Describe the production process in your technical documentation. And also important, we heard it this morning already, knowledge about chemicals used, about materials used in your product. Therefore, we are asking, and it's mandatory, it's a requirement, that you list your materials used. So we have a bill of materials, the BOM, and we have a BOS, bill of substances. This has to be filed in the technical documentation. The second part of the sentence was that you have to file the safety data sheets. There's no specific content and criteria for elaborating these safety data sheets in the Toy Safety Directive. Therefore, we took the requirements from the REACH regulation. You will find more information on the structure of the safety data sheets and when do you have to elaborate these safety data sheets in the REACH regulation, but also in the technical documentation I just referred to, which is available in Chinese language. Item 2. It's also a very important aspect. It's the safety assessment. However, the next presentation will deal with that in detail, so I will skip it in this presentation. But again, all information is contained in the technical guidance document, and I'm sure that the next presentation by Mr. Wetterberg will reveal some clarifications on this issue. Item 3, the 3 out of 8. A description of the conformity assessment procedure followed. In Europe, we have 2 conformity assessment procedures for the toys area. We have the self-verification and we have a third-party verification. My screen was getting black, so okay. The self-verification is Module A, we call it in our internal jargon, if I can say it. Third-party verification uses 2 modules. It's Module B and C, and I will come back to those immediately. If we have a look at self-verification, then you, as a manufacturer, use the referenced and harmonized standards covering all relevant requirements. Where can you find those standards giving presumption? I've listed the website at the bottom of the slide. Please have a look at that web page in order for you to know what standards are referenced under the Toy Safety Directive. If you follow these reference standards, then you can check them according to these standards using your own lab or any independent test house you wish. And they will deliver, or yourself will deliver, a test report. In this case, you don't have an involvement of a notified body. We call it a notified body. It's also known as a recognized accreditation body under the Toy Safety Directive. So here, in this stage, for self-verification, you do not need a notified body. However, in addition to your test reports, you also have to ensure that you have an internal production control procedure in place. So it's not only testing one product and then the rest of your production you don't care. No, you have to make sure that the rest of your production is in compliance and is similar or identical to the product that you have tested. The second conformity assessment procedure is the third-party verification. This is only needed in specific cases. And here, for the third-party verification, you need a notified body. And this notified body will perform an EC type examination and will deliver a certificate. Also, you as a manufacturer has a conformity to type procedure needed to have it in place. So it's not just having a certificate, you also have to ensure that the rest of your production of products is identical to the one that you have tested, well, that has been tested by a notified body. Self-verification and third-party verification, it always remains the responsibility of the manufacturer. It's not because you have a certificate from a notified body that you can say now that notified body is responsible. You still have to have a conformity to type procedure in place, and you're still responsible for the compliance of your products. In order to help you to know when you need third-party verification, I would like to refer to a protocol of the notified bodies, which gives a list of toys which need third-party verification. Again, the link is in the presentation. The fourth item of the technical documentation is a copy of the Declaration of Conformity. And we have a model structure in the Toy Safety Directive which has to be used. And the Declaration of Conformity is needed in the languages where the toy is made available. Earlier I said that the technical documentation, it's sufficient to have it in one of the EU languages. The Declaration of Conformity is needed in all languages of the countries where you placed your product on the market. So if you have it in Spain, it has to be in Spanish, in the UK in English, France in French. In order to help you, we have made a compilation of the different language versions. So you only have to fill in your name and identification and necessary information, but all the language versions are on our website on that link. How does the Declaration of Conformity look like? Also here we have 8 items to list, and I would like to point out the first and most important one is the unique identification of the toy. If somebody on the market, an authority, takes a toy from a shelf and he will look at the identification on that product, he must be able to link that identification code with the code on the Declaration of Conformity. Very important to note down. Please bear in mind that the declaration has to be dated and signed, and you can add any other information under item 8 if you wish so. A fifth item of the technical documentation is the addresses of the places of manufacture and storage. It might happen that the address of the manufacturer is not the address of the manufacturing of the product. So here in the technical documentation, you have to list the addresses of the places of manufacture and storage. Item 6 is copies of documents that the manufacturer has submitted to a notified body. Remember that I said that you only needed a notified body when you had a third-party verification. So here we are only in the case when you have a third-party verification. If you have no third-party verification, this item is not really needed. If you use third-party verification, then this part will contain more specifically the name and address of the manufacturer, a written declaration that the same application has not been lodged with any other notified body. It might happen that you go to one notified body and that your product fails, and then you say, well, I will try with another notified body, perhaps that one will say it passes. No, you have to insert a written declaration that it has not been lodged with another notified body. This has to be filed into the technical documentation. And also the supporting evidence of the adequacy of the technical design solution has to be inserted. If we have self-verification, so if you used your in-house test lab or another independent test house, then the test reports and description of the means that you ensure the conformity of the production with the harmonized standard has to be documented into the technical documentation. So all your test reports have to be inserted, and also the way you ensured that the rest of your production is compliant with the original tested product has to be filed into this document. It is advisable that the test reports are drawn up in accordance with Clause 510 of the ISO standards. We have seen differences in the way test reports were elaborated. And again, for authorities, it's important that they are able to link test reports with the products which are placed on the market. We've seen that test reports refer to a soft-filled bear, but if you go out to a toy shop, you will see 100 different toy bears. So it's important that you are able to link your test reports to your product. And also the reference to the standards need to be included and need to include the issuing date and version of the standards. As you might know, under the new Toy Safety Directive, for example, EN 71, Part 1, version 2011 is referenced and harmonized. So if you would use EN 71.1, Part 1, from 2009, that standard does not give presumption of conformity according to the new requirements of the new Toy Safety Directive. It's version 71, Part 1, 2011, who's referenced in the official journal and who gives presumption of conformity for the requirements covered. And last item of the technical documentation is a copy of the certificate that you received from your notified body. And, as said, also the way you proved that the other products are in compliance with the prototype or the product tested by that notified body. All the information, the Toy Safety Directive into Chinese language. We also have an explanatory guidance document to the Toy Safety Directive explaining all the articles of the Toy Safety Directive is available in Chinese language. And as said, also the technical documentation guidance document is available in Chinese language on our website, for which you see the link on the above slide. And I would like to say that it's true that education is important. We were here last November. We are here today. We were in Shenzhen yesterday. We will come back in future. But it's not only the need to train you, the manufacturers, we also train our importers and our other economic operators in Europe, because they are passing also information to you, and they also need to pass the correct information. Therefore, we are launching in Europe also a campaign addressing our economic operators within the EU in the different member states. So it's not only you we try to educate, but also our own economic operators in the EU. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I think there are questions and answers at the end of this meeting.